sports. It's in the game.
Oh no!
It's similar. Here come the 5 red lights for the Spanish Grand Prix. And it's lights out, and away we go. Hamilton's going to be alongside him at the turn 1, and Hamilton's taking the lead, and the Mercedes avoid each other, and we've had Mercedes in contact here before, back in 2016. Verstappen there down the inside of Jackson, we win it again for this. And here comes Aiden Jackson. Is he going to look at Charles Leclerc round the outside? We've seen this before just last year, and he goes round the outside. Doesn't he make the move? Yes, he does. Oh my word. Aiden Jackson has done it in turn 2 and 3 again. As Aiden Jackson goes round the outside of Lewis Hamilton into turn 1. It's going to be the same move that he did on Leclerc. Hangs it in for turn 2. And he's done it again. And we have the possibility of Aiden Jackson leading the Grand Prix for the first time in the Audi era. Down the inside this time. And he's held it. And Aiden Jackson has led a Grand Prix for Audi's first lead of a Grand Prix. Lando Norris is going slowly. Aiden Jackson says the fastest lap of 122.6, and I think that's a front right puncture on the McLaren of Lando Norris. Now as George Russell goes down the inside as we head into turn 4 or 5, and he got him. I think he might have. Where Jackson lost out to Latifi last year and he's lost out to Russell this year. Jackson's just passed George Russell, we didn't see it, but Jackson has just repassed George Russell. Oh my goodness, Jackson a mile off! What a move, and he didn't make any contact with Russell at all. Charles had a grip out of turn 2 with the medium tyres. Max Verstappen holding it round the outside. Please tell me he made that pass. He did! And he's going to be a sitting duck in the second DRS zone, chased by Max Verstappen. We waited a year for this, folks. Please don't pit either of them. We don't want to see in the pit. Oh, I think Max is in the pit. Oh, he's in the pit. He's in the pit. Now that's interesting because Aiden's going on. So Jackson is going longer than Max in the Red Bull on like softer tyres. And there's Max Verstappen go down the inside of Lewis Hamilton with DRS, and it's no contest again. And Jackson's come out ahead of Russell. And now, well, this is interesting now because Jackson is wide in position for the win of this race. But how quickly will Max Verstappen pull away? Jackson's got to get those tyres up to temperature, and now the hard tyres, they'll take longer to do so. George Russell is down the inside, and we've got racing everywhere. And Jackson and Russell just cannot be separated on this track. Now we go to turn 7, or I don't even know what corner it is. But anyway, now it's still side by side, and finally Jackson gets ahead. We got Hamilton going past, Jackson going past around the outside of Hamilton again in turn 1 and 2. His favourite passing position, and he's done it again. Max Verstappen wins the Spanish Grand Prix again. The Monaco Grand Prix. Nothing more needs saying than that. Very good afternoon to you all on Principality Weekend. As across the border, of course, we've got the Indy 500, but for us today, it's the Monaco Grand Prix. This is the one that every young racing driver dreams of winning. And just maybe by the end of lap 78 today, we could be adding a new name to that list of prestigious winners, from Senna to Hamilton, from Hakkinen to Schumacher, and even Olivier Panis back in 1996 in that crazy race where only 3 drivers finished. Yesterday, Aiden Jackson shocked the paddock and the world by scoring his first ever Formula 1 pole position in the most crucial qualifying of the season, alongside Carlos Sainz on the front row. They're followed by last year's winner and championship leader Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, who's still looking for a classified finish at his home Grand Prix after 2 DNFs and it did not start last year. But Aaron Henwood, it's all about Audi, isn't it? On Sunday is chaos and Jackson's making a habit of stealing the headlines, and news from the paddock just in this morning is that he's starting the race on the soft tyres. An unusual decision really, considering Monaco's most notorious characteristic is of course the track being the most difficult to overtake on for the season. But Audi do know that they don't have the fastest car overall, so they'll be relying on the fastest compound and Jackson's superb defensive skills to keep the lead. For Sainz and Verstappen, their car advantage should allow them to just simply stay with Jackson so they can pass him in the pits. Further down for Leclerc, as you said, he's hoping just to make it to the end of the race following 2 DNFs and it did not start last year. But one man unfortunately in for a difficult race today is Lewis Hamilton, who starts 12th after taking a penalty. And Mercedes have historically struggled at street tracks, but we also know that Hamilton can always make the best of difficult situations, as his win proved back in 2019. One team that does help is Alfa Romeo, who have their best chance to score their first points of the season with Bottas starting 9th on the grid and Zhou Guanyu 11th, and so that they can make the best of this opportunity after considering the scrutiny that Alfa are facing after 6 races with no points. Thank you as always, Aaron. We'll join you in the commentary box very shortly for the duel in the Formula 1 crown, the 2022 Monaco Grand Prix. And this circuit has always been considered the toughest challenge in motorsport, as every lap around the 19 corners requires maximum concentration. And there is always the potential of appearance from the safety car. This one lap in a crucial qualifying session by Carlos Sainz demonstrates the sheer skill that these F1 drivers possess for sure. On board Carlos Sainz for a lap round the most spectacular and challenging circuit of the season, across the start-finish line to begin a qualifying lap into Sanderbot, always a tricky corner. We've seen people going off into the runoff areas and even crashing in the case of Lewis Hamilton back in 2007. Now we're into the first casino section for the left and right. Now the drivers always take a right round this section to avoid the big bump that's on the left-hand side before entering the 2 consecutive hairpins, the second of which is the Lowe's hairpin, which is traditionally a corner that Formula 1 cars would not be able to take, save for a steering mount that is used just for that very corner. Now into the most flashpoint point of the circuit, which is the tunnel, and then out of the tunnel. It goes by in a flash. It's definitely the most spectacular part of a Formula 1 circuit. Now we head into the swimming pool section, traditionally now flat out, with the turning and downforce of these cars, even with the new kind of adjustments made to the 2022 vehicles, it's still mostly flat out. Into the final couple of corners, try to avoid spinning up the rear tyres and hitting the wall, and that is a lap for the Monaco Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz starting second alongside poleman Aiden Jackson in the Audi. Well, if there was ever a race weekend to break the stronghold that Verstappen and Leclerc have had on the 2022 Formula 1 season, this would be it. The fact is the Monaco Grand Prix presents that opportunity all by itself, but we also have a very unusual front row of Aiden Jackson going from his first ever pole position in the Audi and Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. It's the Monaco Grand Prix, round 7 of the 2022 Formula 1 season. Commentary from the Principality. The jewel in the crown of Formula 1 is, of course, from Aaron Henwood. Thank you, Chaos. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Monaco, the most challenging circuit on the calendar. For 78 laps, maximum concentration is required because you are never too far away from the barriers ending your race, especially in these wider cars since 2017. For all intents and purposes, the Monaco Grand Prix circuit has remained unchanged since its introduction back in 1929. The only real addition is that the DRS zone, when DRS became a rule in 2011, and the zone today, the activation is just before the last corner, I believe, with the straight being the activation zone. But even with that, overtaking is still notoriously difficult here at the Monaco Grand Prix. It can be done, but it's much more risky than in the past, and because of that, we could be having another procession race, unfortunately, this weekend, but we could still celebrate a brand new winner in 2022 because the front row has two very unusual suspects. We'll go there in a moment. We'll start at the back though for the grid rundown. It's Kevin Magnussen who will start at the back after taking a penalty, and he will start last alongside Nicholas Latifi. Yuki Tsunoda also took a penalty, so he will go from 20th alongside Alexander Albon in the leading Williams. Both Aston Martins are still struggling. Sebastian Vettel is 18th behind his teammate Lance Stroll. Nico Hulkenberg, in massive comparison to his teammate, only starts with 16th alongside Mick Schumacher, and then ahead of them are the two Alpines, Ocon and Alonso. Lewis Hamilton will also take a penalty and he will start 12th behind the Alfa Romeo of Zhou Guanyu. Into the top 10 we go, and Pierre Gasly is 10th alongside Valtteri Bottas as Alfa Romeo finally have a good chance of scoring some points today behind Ricciardo and Perez. Lando Norris, a fantastic qualifying, made him up to 5th ahead of George Russell. Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen, the championship antagonists, on the second row, and on the front row, Carlos Sainz and Aiden Jackson. No one thought we would say that at the end of qualifying. Audi going from their first ever pole position, and that's the same case for Aiden Jackson. And he is taking no chances. He is starting the race on the soft tyres, which theoretically would give him the best grip off the start and maybe an opportunity to race away from the front. Of course, the two drawbacks of that is that he will be stopping ahead of those behind him, so he will stop first theoretically. And of course, the car advantage that Ferrari in particular have over the rest of the field, and of course Red Bull in comparison to the Audi. But Aiden Jackson has beaten Sergio Perez a lot of times this season, so that might help. The only thing that can really help Jackson now is that if he ekes out the tyres and defends well. But we are expecting Sainz to make, and Verstappen in particular, to probably take the lead on the second place during the pit stops and be down to them for the win of this race. Jackson probably can't win it from this position, but if he does get a good start and does manage to get some pace in that car and break away from the rest of the field, maybe then, but he will be stopping first because he's on the softest tyres. Even with tyre wear not being really much of an issue here, it still could pose an issue for Jackson having to start on the softest tyres. He's going for a real gamble here. He's probably going to be sacrificing track position if anything, but we'll just have to see how this race pans out. Like we said, Monaco, expect the unexpected. Expect an incident, maybe expect a safety car. If a safety car comes out, that aids Jackson tremendously, and there is always a high possibility of it here as we take to the grid for the jewel in the crown of the Formula 1 calendar. It can be a procession these days, especially with the wider cars, but with Jackson and Verstappen in particular having overtaking prowess, that can obviously be possible. Michael Schumacher scored from 5th from last after taking a penalty in the 2006 race, if you remember. So it can be done. And, well, it is the Monaco Grand Prix. Always expect the unexpected here as they line up on the grid. There's the green flag, and there come the 5 red lights for the jewel in the crown of Formula 1. And it's lights out, and away we go, and it looks like Aiden Jackson's got a good start, and he will lead going to Sandboard. Charles Leclerc, did he get alongside Verstappen there? I think he did. We've cut to the back. We've all gone through Sandboard completely unscathed by the looks of it. Very good when well behaved into turn 1. Did Charles beat Verstappen? He did. Charles Leclerc has beaten Verstappen into Sandboard, and now he is 3rd, and that is crucial for the championship, because Max Verstappen obviously took the championship lead after winning the Spanish Grand Prix last time out, and now the championship contenders have swapped positions. Further back, we've got George Russell in 5th. He's beaten Lando Norris Sergio Perez has gone down to 7th. We've all gone through the Lowe's hairpin. We're all going to go through single file. Lowe's hairpin is a notorious corner because Formula 1 cars traditionally wouldn't make the turn. We need a special steering mount for these cars to make that corner, and we've all gone through for the first lap pretty much unscathed, I think. Aiden Jackson having to take a wider line through that chicane. We know that the Audi has suffered from underfall damage from Jackson trying to attack that corner. So since Q3, he's been advised to give that chicane and the other curbs a wide berth because Audi have had to fix the underfloor every time Jackson goes out on a run during practice. It's not really a big repair job, as Jackson got really loose out of the last 2 corners as the Audi continues to be a bit of a diva coming for the last 2 corners there. And I think that's really what's going to really let Jackson down in this race as we come to the end of the first lap. So the real movers, Charles Leclerc and I think George Russell, who got ahead of Lando Norris there. Lewis Hamilton has also lost a position. He's down to 13th after Alonso passed him for 12th. And here's the replay of the start from Jackson then. Perfect start leading into Sainte-Devote. Will he stay there for the rest of the race remains to be seen. I think considering the car advantage that Ferrari and Red Bull have over the Audi, sadly the answer might be no. And especially considering the diva characteristics of the Audi this season in the corners. And here was Charles Leclerc going around the outside of Max Verstappen. Brave move indeed, and good racing from Max Verstappen, thinking about the championship. And then Leclerc get ahead of him. He would not really get ahead of him in the championship at the end of this race because the gap between them is 7 points. I think Max would only lose 3, so that would still put him on 4 ahead by the end of this race. So Aiden Jackson leads from the Ferrari car side. Charles Leclerc made up 1 position as Max fell down 1. George Russell made his way back up to 5th ahead of Lando Norris. Sergio Perez is still 7th. Ricciardo is 8th, followed by Pierre Gasly and Valtteri Bottas. So Gasly got ahead of Bottas at the start, but Alfa Romeo is still on for a single point then, with Bottas in 10th. Behind him, Zhou Guan Yu is 11th, followed by Fernando Alonso, got ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Mick Schumacher is 14th, ahead of Lance Stroll, who got into 15th place. That's a good start from Lance Stroll, by the way, who's beaten Esteban Ocon. He was the big loser at the start, down in 16th. Hulkenberg has gone down to 17th place ahead of Sebastian Vettel. Alex Albon is 18th, or 19th rather, followed by Yuki Tsunoda, and Kevin Magnussen is ahead of Nicholas Latifi. And that is your order as we're into the first sector of lap 3. And unfortunately now we might hit the procession part of this race where everyone really has to follow everyone single file because overtaking is notoriously more risky than it ever was before. And the fact that Aiden Jackson really hasn't got much of a car advantage over the front runners means the Ferraris and Verstappen will most likely get held up and just wait for Jackson to pit. He will be pitting a lot sooner than those behind him on the medium tyres. We also saw the Alpines starting on the hard tyres during the formation lap. So Jackson's not the only one going for a different strategy to everyone else. The Alpines are starting on the hard tyres, and that's aided Fernando Alonso because now he's up to 12th. Esteban Ocon's the big loser down in 16th. And Aston Martin's Lance Stroll, so that's a good effort by Lance Stroll to get into 15th place. But he's behind Mick Schumacher in the Haas, who is 14th, and Haas still yet to score more points since Kevin Magnussen scored 1 in Bahrain. Hulkenberg hasn't scored since then either, and he's down in 17th in the Audi while his teammate leads. Here's Max Verstappen, the championship leader, and the Ferraris and the Red Bull in particular will have a massive car advantage over the Audi, so all they really need to do is stick with Aiden Jackson. They don't need to take any risks. They will pass Jackson in the pit phase because Jackson does not really have the car advantage over the Ferraris and Red Bulls because Monaco is a very twisty and tight track, which Audi's characteristic diva characteristic we should say, has not favoured Audi this weekend, and that's why Hulkenberg has struggled down in 17th place and only got out of didn't even get out of Q1 in qualifying. Aiden Jackson's pole, that's why it was so surprising, because Hulkenberg could barely get out of Q1, or didn't even, and Jackson scored pole. So the Audi is very good on the soft tyres over 1 lap, but that's all the soft tyres are really good for at Monaco, even with tyre wear being less. You'll get your grip really for 1 or 2 laps, and that'll be the end of the grip really. And I think Jackson is going to hit that phase, and it's really proving dividends for Ferrari now. Carlos Sainz has got a great opportunity to add to that debut win he scored in last year's French Grand Prix. Aiden Jackson's also going for his second win, but he's acting onto the one he scored at the Italian Grand Prix last year. So if it goes this way, we could definitely have our first new winner of 2022. It's taken a while, but like we said at the beginning of the show, it's this best opportunity to do so. Aiden Jackson still currently leading on the soft tyres and really getting nowhere near far out ahead to challenge for the race win today. I think Jackson's just going to hold it until he can pit and do the best he can. And let's just see him through the chicane. Does he take a wider line? He does. He really takes it a lot less aggressively than those behind him because of the underfall damage that Audi have suffered over the course of the practice sessions. So Jackson, since qualifying, has been giving that curb a wider berth than others. But even though Aiden Jackson has such an attacking, aggressive style behind the wheel, it's certainly not been his best racetrack. Last year he was stuck behind Mick Schumacher for the majority of the race until he cleared him in the pits. But of course Jackson had to pit for front wing damage at his pit stop because of a faulty sensor that showed possible front wing damage, and there was a slight bit of damage on the front wing, and Haas at the time felt the need to change it. So Jackson lost out. I mean, he wasn't going to score points in there, but he was doing a very admirable job. Of course, Jackson saved a slide that would have ended his race on a normal day, but Jackson was able to save it and continue on his day in the swimming pool section. And the order is as you were last time we checked out. That's the end of the first sector in lap 6. Aiden Jackson is still your race leader and the man with the fastest lap at the moment, but of course he's on the soft tyres and holding everyone else up, really. He hasn't really got the pace in the car to really get away from those behind him. Baku could definitely be a different story for Audi. They're really looking forward to Baku because they have a very good DRS system and a very good car aerodynamically, and that'll favour the Audi big time in that Grand Prix. But the Azerbaijan Grand Prix might be seen as another reason, because I think it's the track where the porpoising effect could really show its ugly self, and the FIA are going to be taking a very close eye over the porpoising effect of particularly the Mercedes and the Audi over the course of that weekend, because they're the cars that have been struggling with it the most. It'll probably show on every team's car in that race weekend because of the long straights in Baku, particularly the start-finish straight and well, the third sector really, which is basically just a straight and a couple of corners. But here today, it's not about aerodynamics, it's about good front downforce, and Audi, whereas they do have that, they certainly don't have it in terms of the Ferraris and Red Bulls, and it's showing because even though Jackson is on the softer tyres than the Ferraris and Red Bull Verstappen, they're easily able to keep with him, and the only way Jackson pulls out any sort of a gap is here in the tunnel and the start-finish straight, and it's nowhere near enough for Jackson to aid him to win this race. And you can see there how more aggressively Carlos Sainz attacked that chicane when Jackson did it. He gave the curb a wider berth than Sainz did, so you can definitely tell Audi are concerned with the underfloor damage that Jackson has sustained over the course of the weekend, and telling Jackson to give that section a very wide berth. Look at this train that Jackson is having. It's done through no fault of his own, but the chassis characteristics of that car just are not good on the Audi at the moment. It's the one area they've struggled with coming into Formula 1, because even with the blueprints these cars that they've had over the course of the last, say, 9 months to a year, since they unveiled their show car back in 2021's summer break, it hasn't been that much of an advantage because they have had the blueprint since then, with their plan to enter in 2026. I think we've really shown that Audi, whereas they weren't altogether ready, they've certainly made the best of that situation. But it's very much been struggling in the hands of Hulkenberg. But Jackson is really making use of the deficiencies that the Audi currently has over the rest of the field at the moment, after kind of joining very late, and, well, not very late, but they got things together very late in the day after planning to come forward with their entry early. They were looking to come over take over from the Sauber team after their Alfa Romeo deal concludes, and then in 2026 become their own works team. And they still aren't a works team yet because they're still powered by Mercedes, but Jackson is really proving a fruitful signing for them during this early transition period. They will be behind in the early years while they get things together and work out with their power unit. We're on board with Daniel Ricciardo as we start lap 9, a former winner of this Grand Prix back in 2018, I believe, after being chased home all the way by Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari. It may have even been 2017, and we all remember how Daniel Ricciardo was comfortably in this race, and a mistake in the pit stops led to him losing it at the end, and then he got his redemption back in the year he did win it, which I believe was 2018, chased home by the Ferrari of Sebastian Vettel, and I believe Hamilton and Verstappen were behind him as well, and Ricciardo obviously lost power in the car and had to nurse it all the way home, and due to Monaco being notorious for having overtaking be difficult, Ricciardo was able to win that race, and that was even proven back in 2001 when David Coulthard spent more than a quarter of the Grand Prix behind the arrows of Enrique Bernaldi after he himself stalled on the formation lap in a race that was dominated by Michael Schumacher to the end. And the Ferraris are now really noticing once again themselves how difficult it is. I mean, even with Jackson just lighting up the rear and losing it, he's catching it just as well and keeping the lead. But sooner rather than later, those tyres will acquire enough, and Aiden Jackson will have to pit, and that will be pretty much at the end of his race. The question will be, what will Jackson go on after this stint? Because if he stops around now, to say lap 13, then he will struggle, because he will probably have to fit the hard tyres as opposed to the mediums. If he pits on lap 15, which could be his opening of the window, to lap 20, then he could easily go on the medium tyres to the end of the race, and that might prove dividends depending on what everyone else goes on, because of course tyre wear is not a huge issue here at this race. But it also means Jackson's not getting he's probably getting the best of those tyres, but the car is letting him down at the moment as they come through the tunnel. Race order for you: Aiden Jackson still leads from the two Ferraris, Max Verstappen, George Russell. Lando Norris 6th, followed by Sergio Perez. Pierre Gasly is 9th behind Daniel Ricciardo, and the Alfa Romeos of Bottas and Zhou are 10th and 11th place. Alfa need points here because they've not scored in the first 6 races, as Jackson continues to struggle in the final corners. Look how much the car is stepping out. Jackson has no control over that car. It's been something he's struggled with all season long, and I'm sure he can't wait for Baku either. And if Audi continue on their great trajectory, hopefully they'll be better for the next street circuit we'll go to, that's very much like this circuit, and that'll be Singapore, for the return of a Singapore Grand Prix for the first time since 2020. Or 2019 rather, because we didn't have a Singapore Grand Prix in 2020 or 2021 due to the effects of the pandemic. We're on lap 11, and Aiden Jackson is still leading, but with a very, very difficultly handling car today. Getting very squarely out of corners. The Audi does not, is very, let's say, what's the word, very finicky on its traction and its torque output. The Jackson doesn't like. He likes a car to be planted on the front end, very similar to a driving style of, like, say, Michael Schumacher or Kimi Raikkonen. A very planted front end car, and whether he's good through this section and down the straight, the end of the circuit, around the Las Cas Hotel, is where Jackson struggles. And you can see now, and let's just see him out of his corner, he's having to feather it out. That one. Will he spin up the rear tyres? No, because he's probably having to take it a lot more cautiously than others, because the Audi does not like traction out of corners. Traction out of corners has been Audi's struggle throughout the course of this year, and the diva characteristics of the car. And, but Jackson is still holding on to a very well-deserved lead, but it's not going to be something he inherits for much longer. You have to feel, if the tyres don't give up, then his tyres will need changing regardless. He will lose the lead, and he's getting nowhere in terms of the Ferrari and Red Bull, which is much better than the Audi in overall pace all by itself, really. And Jackson's just forming a train at the moment, but no one can make any moves on, because of course it's Monaco. It's notoriously difficult to overtake around here, even with the DRS zone, as Sainz is finding out. Excuse me, because even if there's no DRS on Jackson, notoriously, Monaco is just notoriously difficult, and Jackson's just all over the road. He's struggling with that car. He's not doing anything rash, but he's really struggling with the handling of that car. And he's gone a bit wide there. Carlos Sainz has a look at Jackson, and now that opens the door for Charles Leclerc, and he tries to go down the inside, but at the inside going into the corner. Oh, and Sainz cut him off. Sainz cut him off, and now who will that aid? Because I think Charles will be forced offline. There's Max Verstappen trying to move somewhere. I believe he's round the outside of Charles Leclerc. That is crucial for the championship, and he's got him. Max Verstappen takes advantage of Charles Leclerc being out of shape in the final couple of corners, and there's Lando Norris side by side with George Russell in the casino section. And will he get him? He's going to have to go over the bump, and there's notoriously there he does, and he actually cut across Russell momentarily there, and he took 5th place. So a couple of overtaking moves already by Verstappen and Norris, and this is how it started. Aiden Jackson having to push Sainz a little bit wider than he would have liked. That opened the door for Leclerc, which was then shut in his face by his teammate, and then that gave impetus for Max Verstappen, and despite the DRS that Leclerc had, he ran over the curb inside the board. That's what gave Verstappen the opening. So great move there by Verstappen. Leclerc was out of shape in Sandboard, a little bit further into the lap, into the Castillo section. Lando Norris almost up against the wall, and this was so brave. This was fantastic racing by Lando Norris and George Russell. And we've had those battles before in Formula 2, and they have another battle there, which Norris comes out in front. And here comes Aiden Jackson, and that is a call to the hard tyres for the rest of the race now. So Carlos Sainz now leads, finally clear of Jackson. Let's see how fast he can get away for the rest of the race. And that is the hard tyres going on the Audi, so it's probably 2 laps earlier than Audi would have particularly liked. Lap 14, and Aiden Jackson has made a pit stop. Now, the question will be, how much will Aiden actually gain? He won't win this race because he used up all those soft tyres and got practically nowhere in terms of trying to build a gap. And now Carlos Sainz leads the 2022 Monaco Grand Prix, a race winner in 2021 at the French Grand Prix. And well, his second victory could be the sweetest of all. The Monaco Grand Prix is the one every driver wants to win, and they joined a prestigious list. Senna, Schumacher, Hill, Panis, and the like, and Coulthard and Hakkinen as well. All famous names, some of them world champions, some of them surprise winners in the case of Panis, some of them very decent drivers like David Coulthard. The Monaco Grand Prix is where Formula 1 drivers show their skills, and just the skills that they possess. Now, Valtteri Bottas has moved up to 8th here. Now this is interesting. Bottas is now 8th. I think he's passed Gasly somewhere, because Bottas was behind Gasly earlier. So Bottas now has points on the board, and with the pit stop of Jackson, Zhou Guanyu is now in the points for Alfa Romeo as well. So we could be looking at a double point finish for Alfa Romeo then. And that'd be great for Zhou Guanyu. He's not scored a point in Formula 1 yet. He's definitely had his own fair share of bad luck. Lando Norris is now 4th and running with Charles Leclerc. Now at the front, Carlos Sainz is not getting away from Max Verstappen per se. Now, of course, the Ferrari and Red Bull have been fairly even in 2022. They've dominated the season in terms of race wins, with Verstappen and Leclerc sharing all the wins so far this season. And there is Aiden Jackson, and he is the fastest man in Sector 1, Aiden Jackson. Now that's interesting, and he's already catching up to the Williams here. You could see it in the same shot. Jackson is flying on his opening stint on the hard tyres. As Carlos Sainz completes another lap, he's now grown the gap to just over a second, but I think Verstappen had DRS, so that will close him in a little bit more. And now we're seeing Carlos Sainz stretch his legs in this Ferrari. And Aiden Jackson has just set the fastest lap of a 1:17.1 double 9, or double 1:9 we should say. 119. So, it all really depends on Aiden Jackson getting that fastest lap. It really depends now on what everyone else will do in terms of their tyre strategy. Jackson, in the space of 2 laps, has caught up to the back of Nicholas Latifi in the Williams. So even though Carlos Sainz is obviously on somewhat worn tyres, there's George Russell. He's going slow in the tunnel. Oh no, another problem for George Russell. He's having a terrible luck season in terms of reliability. This has not been Mercedes' best year in the reliability department. Normally their cars are bulletproof, but not this year. And they seem to all be full George Russell at the moment. And that's another retirement for George. He's had such terrible luck, really. And here we are on the replay. And he was slow through the tunnel. I think the transmission had gone, because there was no smoke coming out of the back of the Mercedes. So I'm assuming George has just lost drive, really. And sadly, that puts him out of this race at the end. Just there, he parked in a good spot, so no need for the safety car then. As we go now we go into the pit stop phase. There's Max Verstappen, and he's beaten Charles Leclerc out of the pits. He was ahead of Charles anyway. And now we look at Zhou Guan Yu, who is up into P4 for Alfa Romeo. So that obviously means Bottas is pitted. And how many places will Jackson make up here? Up to 14th. There's a Ferrari Leclerc, so he's beaten Leclerc. Oh my, that was very close. Jackson in a perfect position, and that has worked out great for Aiden Jackson because he's beaten one of the Ferraris. So that'll probably be a net. P3 by the end of this race. And there's Lewis Hamilton down in 18th place and struggling. And there's Jackson passing Nicholas Latifi, and that was a great move. And wonderful move there by Aiden Jackson. He got ahead of the Williams, and that's crucial, really. He's dispatched him as soon as he got there. And, well, here's the replay. And he just hung with Latifi very nicely. Latifi kind of gets on the bump. Jackson goes round the outside of Mirabeau. And wonderful move. Slight touch and brush with Latifi, very much like last year. And Jackson made that stick. Wonderful move by Jackson. In a place you wouldn't really see overtaking. Jackson's move on Latifi in the Williams last year was exactly in the same corner. And Latifi's well out of shape. So no wonder Jackson was able to get alongside, because Latifi's well out of shape in that instance. And he completed the move. Great move by Jackson once again. Another great overtake. As Carlos Sainz comes into the pits. Will he get held up by Lando Norris? No. And that should be all she wrote in terms of the win of this race. And Fernando Alonso will now inherit the lead in the Alpine. But of course, the Alpines are on hard tyres, which is going to be proven in just a second there. It's an Alpine 1-2. Carlos Sainz has beaten Verstappen out of the pits. Lando Norris has beaten Perez. And there's Jackson getting ahead of Perez as well. So Jackson is now P6, and that is the pit stops completed. So Jackson actually lost a couple more places. Of course, he'll gain 2 from the Alpines pitting, so it's going to be P4 then. Aiden Jackson at Monaco, considering he was near the back in last year's Grand Prix, it's a massive improvement. So Carlos Sainz obviously inherits the lead after the Alpine pits, so he is on for the net lead of this race. And 4 attempts clear of Verstappen. We have Fernando Alonso leading a Grand Prix, I believe, for the first time since, I want to say 2014, with Ferrari, possibly 2013. I think his last Grand Prix win was in 2012. And around last cast. Now, how far can the Alpines go here? And what are the others on? I'm assuming everyone behind the Alpines is also on hard tyres. Esteban Ocon, obviously a race winner just last year in the Hungarian Grand Prix, which was a crazy race. And here's Lando Norris on the hard tyres. So everyone's gone to the hard tyres for the rest of this race. just to make it to the end. But of course, these guys are on the mediums. Aiden Jackson had to pit for his tyres much earlier, so he's probably going to have a very painful end to the race, unless he can save those tyres. So after all the pit stops have filtered out, here's the order. It's Alonso from Ocon, and LP1-2. Won't stay that way, sadly. Carlos Sainz third, ahead of Verstappen. Lando Norris has beaten Jackson out of the pits. And Perez is 7th, followed by Charles Leclerc, Daniel Ricciardo, and Pierre Gasly. And there's your top 10. Valtteri Bottas is 11th now. He'll inherit. He'll go back up to possibly 9th if he can keep up with the train ahead. And Lewis Hamilton now 12th, which could become 10th as long as he sticks with his former teammate and good friend Valtteri Bottas. And that's going to mean Mick Schumacher will possibly be 11th and just outside the points. Zhou Guan Yu is ahead of Hulkenberg. Lance Stroll is ahead of his teammate Sebastian Vettel. Alex Albon is ahead of Tsunoda. And Magnussen is ahead of Latifi. George Russell is, of course, out of the race with loss of drive. It seems like, as we saw from the replay. Lando Norris has definitely been the standout star this weekend. He will be in 3rd after the Alpine's pit. And he's getting away from Jackson in the Audi. Another great drive by Lando Norris. Another one who goes relatively unnoticed when he has a decent drive. It's another great drive by Lando Norris. And of course, he won the Styrian Grand Prix last year. The Mercedes came together. Here's Fernando Alonso, leading his teammate by 4 seconds. And the Alpines have gone relatively long into this race. So I wonder, when they pit, will they go into the medium tyres? Alonso goes on again. So the Alpines feel relatively comfortable on their hard tyres, although to be fair, Carlos Sainz is right there to pass Ocon. And now he's in the DRS zone. Will he have enough speed to pass? No! And that just proves how difficult overtaking is on this circuit. Zhou Guan Yu has dropped to 14th. I think Mick Schumacher has just passed him. That's a good move by Mick. To 13th place. I think he might have been there already. But in any case, we're very long into this stint, and the Alpines are still out there doing the rounds. And Ocon is doing a fantastic job of holding up Carlos Sainz. This is the reverse to the the Hungarian Grand Prix last year, in which Fernando Alonso held up a hard-charging Lewis Hamilton, who was coming for the field after missing an opportunity to pit and having to pit on the lap after the race start. He was the only one on the grid at the start of that race because everyone decided to pit for dry tyres, and I think that was after a restart after Valtteri Bottas inadvertently took out 2 Red Bull cars, or at least 1.5, because Verstappen still ran with a damaged car. And where is Fernando going to come in this time? Yes, he is. So the Alpines are now pitting, which means Ocon will be in a lap later. And unfortunately, I think that's the end of leading the race for Alpine, because he hasn't really got enough of a gap over anyone else to lead it. So now Esteban Ocon inherits the lead from Carlos Sainz. And Alonso is going to lose a heck of a lot here, because he's down to 12th. So Alonso gained really much nothing, unfortunately. I think I saw a green flag blinking there, so I don't know if someone's got a problem. But someone might have had a tiny brush with the wall somewhere, because we had green light flashing. Unless that was just on the pit wall, which is kind of standard procedure. And Jackson is doing very well in this train, but he's starting to lose Lando Norris a little bit. He's still in DRS range, mind you. And Jackson's going to feel some pain late in the race. Look at that much how ERS he's used up. And that's just to probably keep up with Lando Norris at the moment. It's Ocon that's really holding the leaders up. He will be pitting this lap, and that'll give Sainz ample opportunity to stretch his legs again. He did that the first time round. And Ocon comes into the pits. So Even though they've gone long on the hard tyres, it's not really helped them. We've had a lot of trains in this race. Medium tyres for Esteban Ocon. There is a yellow flag, and that is a Red Bull, and that is Perez with no drive, and oh my word, it's an engine blow up completely for Sergio Perez. That puts Lewis Hamilton into the points after a very great race for Lewis Hamilton, just keeping up with everyone around him. Perez was chasing the Audi of Ocon. That's put a load of smoke in Charles Leclerc's visor. And he pulled to the side to keep out of the way. Very well driven by Perez. And most sensibly onto the Sanderberg runoff area. We've seen guys run off there before. In that 2008 Grand Prix, I think we saw a few. I think one was Felipe Massa, I believe. Running off in that great race from Lewis Hamilton, which he won. Even after colliding with the barrier. He was helped by the safety car, but he still crossed the line first. Finish first, he must finish, as the great Murray Walker used to say. And here is Mick Schumacher, once again riddled with bad luck, sitting in 11th place just outside the points. When is this kid going to catch a break? Hopefully soon. We'll be looking forward to the Canadian Grand Prix and the French Grand Prix, most notably, because those are two races there his famous father won multiple times. 7 at Canada and 8 at France, which was a record until Lewis Hamilton equalled it with 8 British Grand Prix wins. So the battle for the lead is still interesting. Max Verstappen is still within DRS range of Carlos Sainz, but such is the Ferrari C-spec power unit. But I don't know if it's Red Bull going to have enough. Normally when Red Bull end up behind Ferrari, they stay there. Apart from Australia, in which Max Verstappen passed an ailing Charles Leclerc, who was nursing an engine problem back there. Ferrari, this is a good bounce back for Ferrari because they've got a difficult couple of races in Miami and Spain, in which Charles Leclerc lost the lead of a championship, and he will lose even more points to Max Verstappen at this current moment in time because he's 4th, or he's 5th rather, stuck behind Aiden Jackson in the Audi. Max Verstappen is just staying in the hunt. When it comes to the championship battle, he's finishing. He didn't finish in Bahrain, of course. Engine failure. The Red Bull powertrain have been very good reliability-wise, except for the retirement of Perez here today. Carlos Sainz just keeping it just below a second, but even with DRS, overtaking is proving difficult. Lewis Hamilton once again making the best of a bad situation here at Monaco, finishing 9th. That'll be 2 points for him. And Alonso will get a point for his trouble in P10. Chased by Mick Schumacher, that has a 4-second gap over the Haas, which has not really got the pace in terms of against the Alpine, really. Because Haas still have a bit of a mountain to climb in the car department. They've got the Ferrari C-spec power unit, but it's not really come to much aid, and you could probably say that for the Alfa Romeos. But today, Bottas is currently on for some points in P8. That'll ease the pressure on team principal Fred Vasseur and everyone around him. Rumoured to be possibly joining Ferrari next year, Fred Vasseur. Although I don't really understand why Mattia Binotto is in the hot seat, as it were, because his team's had a very good season. Shared most of the wins with Max Verstappen. And Carlos Sainz is finally going to come good today by the looks of it. His 2nd race win of his career after winning the French Grand Prix last year. This will be the sweetest of the two so far, because it's the Monaco Grand Prix. It's the one everyone wants to win. And will we one day be putting this man, Aiden Jackson, on it in the near future? And he will join such great Brits like Hill and Hamilton to have won this prestigious event. He scored a pole at it. We did half the work. The Audi is not there against the Ferraris and Red Bulls yet. I would say Audi is probably just slightly below Red Bull though, because Jackson has had the better of Perez over the course of the season. I think that's mostly due to Jackson's superb racing talent. That has been the case. And that really mitigates the car disadvantage that Audi do have. It's just a shame that for Nico Hulkenberg, he's going to be unlucky again in a DRS train down in P13. Hulkenberg has now not scored since Bahrain. Jackson has had... Jackson really bad turn in the last corner again. That diva characteristics of that car is really not suiting this track. It makes Jackson's qualifying lap all the more superb when you consider that he's been struggling with the handling of the car all day. Audi very much promising a much better chassis for next season. Of course, the rumours abound that the famous Connor Sport and the Grid Championships could be becoming a main sponsor opportunity for Audi. They've certainly made some notoriety in their first season. They already have 2 podiums thanks to Aiden Jackson. They already have a pole thanks to Aiden Jackson. Poor Nico Hulkenberg has been very much the unlucky man. Some talk that Hulkenberg may be pulled away at the midpoint of the season. How do you say absolutely not? We have faith in Nico. We know that really it's not been his fault. He's been in the positions he's in. Of course, he had 2 engine failures in back-to-back races, which obviously didn't help. And that's why Magnussen took a penalty today. He was carrying a double engine failure from Australia and Miami, I believe. Well, back at the front, Aiden Jackson is valiantly hanging on to Lando Norris with about 9 laps to go. Let's be on board with him for a moment here. Just see how much he's struggling with the car. Audi's, it's almost a reverse, because Jackson drove the Haas really well. It was just hugely uncompetitive. Audi are competitive, but Jackson is struggling with the handling of the car. Look how close he is to Norris in the tunnel. He soaks up more ERS usage. He's literally out of battery at this point now. What a great race once again from Jackson. It's just unfortunate that with his stint on the soft tyres really didn't amount to much. He does look planted, but it also looks skittish. That was the word I was looking for. Very skittish out of the last couple of corners on this track. Jackson has to kind of be a bit more feathering with the throttle. Doesn't really suit his aggressive style of driving that much. Aggressive but clean would be the words to describe Aiden Jackson's style. Very much pushed to the end of the race. Very much like Schumacher. Michael Schumacher, that is. And at the front, Carlos Sainz is just pegging the gap to Verstappen. That's all he has to do. Verstappen has to take the risks if he wants to, but he can't because he's the leader of the championship at the moment. And Carlos Sainz needs this because I think he's been, being chased by Aiden Jackson in the Drivers' Championship. And I think recently, I think, in the Spanish Grand Prix, passed Perez. And Jackson has 3 podiums. My apologies, because he scored 2 back-to-back in Saudi Arabia and Australia. And he scored 1 in Spain the last time out with a 2nd place after a fantastic drive. So 3 podiums and 1 pole in 7 races is not a bad return for a team entering their first season in the sport 4 years earlier than they had originally planned to. Aiden Jackson is the catalyst for that performance at the moment. Based on results anyway. And like we said, there's no knock on Nico Hulkenberg. But Jackson has a knack of getting the best out of cars that are not altogether competitive in terms of... well, the Audi is certainly not overly competitive in terms of the Red Bull and Ferraris, but at least they can fight with them, and that's what Jackson is using. He's using the tools at his disposal to put Audi in places where a new team really shouldn't be under their circumstances. A 4-year early entry. Not much to go on. Only a blueprints from last year. And they have made a tremendously good car, even if it is a little skittish and very much non-traction based, that car, because Jackson's been fishtailing out of all sorts of corners over the course of the weekend. Here Gasly, honourable mention to him up in P7 now. As the clouds start to gather over this Monaco Grand Prix. A race that probably needs a bit of rain to spice it up a little bit, but I don't think that's coming. I think Jackson's going to be passed by Leclerc sooner or later. I think Jackson might be feeling the effects of those hard tyres soon, and the wear on them. You can certainly see just how quicker Sainz was in the early part of this race. Still only just under a second between him and Verstappen. Lando Norris has fell out of touch with the leading two as Charles Leclerc has a look at Aiden Jackson into Mirabeau, but nothing doing. Charles Leclerc just really will be glad to finish this race after 2 DNFs in 2019 and 2021. No, 2018 and 2019, my apologies. The first year in 2018, he was with Alfa Romeo and had brake failure. No brakes, as he said on the team radio at the end of the race, or the end of his race. In 2019, he started from the back, did a monster move on Romain Grosjean, but then got a bit too hot with the following car, which I believe was Sainz in the Renault, damaged his tyre, and it got shredded on his way back to the pits as he drove back to the pits in anger, shredded his tyre, broke the suspension, and retired from that race. And he only started from the back because of a mix-up with Ferrari in terms of the times in qualifying, I believe. And of course, last year he scored pole, binned it in the wall, broke his gearbox. Ferrari chose not to change it, and Charles suffered power loss on his way to the installation lap, on his way to the grid. That was before the formation lap. So he did not start that race. And of course we didn't have a race in 2020 due to the pandemic procedures. And here today, Charles is chasing fourth in this race as he's behind Aiden Jackson. He's really carrying a poorly handling Audi with him. But to be fair to Jackson, he's doing very well with it. But Charles is all over him, look. I think sooner or later, the inevitable is going to happen. And now Daniel Ricciardo could be getting in on the act as well. He's right behind these two. So Daniel's done well to catch up. And Charles had DRS activated there. And we went on board momentarily, and Aiden Jackson, Charles Leclerc side by side for his centerboard. Jackson says no and shuts the door. That was fair. Jackson gave him the racing room. And you come up against Aiden Jackson, you need to be ready for a fight, because Aiden Jackson will take you to war, as it were. I know it sounds a bit drastic, but you've got to be ready to fight Aiden Jackson, because he will fight you to the very end until he can't anymore. Or his car will give up on him. This man is a fighter. He's definitely got the credentials for a world championship, Aiden Jackson. He would need tremendous luck. It's just very unfortunate that in 2021 Ferrari dropped the ball, because some will say no, that's wrong. Sorry, my bad. It's just, well, I don't know. Ferrari definitely, C-spec power unit was definitely powerful, but it wasn't good enough to challenge with the decisive in the end, was it? So I guess it's the same. But in any case, here's Charles Leclerc around the inside. Jackson just having no traction over the last two corners, and it's easy pickings for Charles Leclerc, and he's up to P4, which will help him somewhat mitigate the gap that Max is going to gain in terms of the championship. Look at this move on the replay. So did Jackson get out of shape? Yes, he did. So he got out of shape and then really just gave Charles the room. I think he knew the inevitable was about to happen there, Jackson. Very well behaved. He knew he was out of the last corner a bit sharp. A bit skittish out of the last corner. He's out of shape. I think he had to concede the position because Charles was just in a much faster car. And now Aiden will just hope that his DRS can help him stay ahead of Ricciardo, because as we know, Audi has a very good aerodynamic car in terms of like the rear wing, and the DRS mechanism, which is really good in the Audi car. It really helps Aiden overtake other drivers. Well, with about 3 laps to go, Carlos Sainz has he seems to be well on his way to winning the Monaco Grand Prix. Valtteri Bottas looks odds on for points. Hamilton's made his way back over to the points. Mick Schumacher, honourable mention, in P11 and staying ahead of Guan Yu Zhou, but really in no position to score a point today. But he's definitely had the beating of his teammate Kevin Magnussen this weekend. Magnussen, to be fair, however, did have an engine penalty that put him to the back of the grid. And Schumacher has gained a second on Guan Yu Zhou, so it's going to put him out of DRS range. There's Hamilton in 9th, but can't pass his good friend and former teammate Valtteri Bottas for 8th place. Which will be crucial points for Alfa Romeo. Here's Daniel Ricciardo, who's looking down the outside. Aiden Jackson, this would be some scrap, wouldn't it? Two men that lick stamps and send them. Jackson and Ricciardo. And this could be a nice scrap at the end of this race. Jackson's all over the road. Carlos Sainz on the penultimate lap, chased all the way home by Max Verstappen. And a very good honourable mention to Lando Norris here, who's a second behind. He can actually see the leaders, one of which is his good friend Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, who is odds on to win the 2022 Monaco Grand Prix. And he never looked like losing it once Aiden Jackson pitted, because he had to pit much earlier for hard tyres. Some will say, why didn't Jackson start on the mediums? Because I don't think it really would have made much of a difference. Jackson went for the risk, really. I think if he'd gone on the mediums, it wouldn't have been any different, because the Ferrari and Red Bull, for the most part, has it over Audi over the course of the 2022 season. And here comes Carlos Sainz on the final lap. And it looks like Aiden Jackson is going to get the fastest lap bonus point for the first time in his career. So, contrary to last year, Aiden Jackson has a stunning time in Monaco this year. More points for Audi, a fastest lap bonus point, and his first pole position yesterday. Charles Leclerc is going to finish the Monaco Grand Prix for the first time. He'll take 4th, considering he hasn't finished in the last 3 of his Monaco Grand Prix appearances. But here is the odds-on race winner, Carlos Sainz, our first new winner of 2022 in a season that has been dominated and pretty much owned by Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. Max will increase his championship lead by a few points, but here today, Carlos Sainz has not put a foot wrong. He wins his 2nd Grand Prix of his career, the sweetest of all. It's the Monaco Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz wins the 2022 Monaco Grand Prix, an absolutely controlled drive. All he had to do was wait for Hamilton to pit, Jackson to pit rather. Max Verstappen increases his championship lead over Charles Leclerc. Lando Norris gets the podium for McLaren. Aiden Jackson finishes with the fastest lap bonus point, and in 5th place, Valtteri Bottas gets the first points for Alfa Romeo this season. Hamilton gets 2 for 9th. Fernando Alonso beats Mick Schumacher by 8 seconds as he unfortunately misses out just again. There is Carlos Sainz, a winner with Ferrari. He's waited such a long time. He was snubbed for Max Verstappen in the Red Bull family, really, which turned out to be an inspired decision in the end, with all due respect to Sainz. But now he is a race winner at Monaco, a 2-time race winner in Formula 1, and that is your lot for the Monaco Grand Prix. The rest of the positions, Zhou Guan Yu finishes 12th ahead of Nico Hulkenberg. A good effort from Lance Stroll to be 14th, starting from 17th. We'll go down the rest of the order in a moment. I can't quite see it from here. But yes, and Aiden Jackson did get the bonus points. So there's 11 points for Jackson now. Ocon is 15th, followed by Vettel. Then it's Albon, then Tsunoda, then Magnussen, who only made it 1 place all afternoon. And that was ahead of Nicholas Latifi, who finishes 20th and last. Sergio Perez and George Russell were your retirements from today's race. As we have a look at the drivers' standings, it's 10 points between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc now. Carlos Sainz's win puts him ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who is chased by Aiden Jackson. I think there's about 20 points between them, however, so Jackson would have to grab a race win somewhere. But he's 5th. Moves up, Lando Norris, Pierre Gasly to 11th, Bottas to 13th with his first score points of the season. And I think Schumacher's moved further ahead of those on 0. Ferrari still hold a 27-point lead in the constructors. McLaren move ahead of Alpine, and Alfa Romeo finally move ahead of Haas into 8th place. Audi consolidate 4th. And there is your winner, Carlos Sainz. Unfortunately, it was a bit of a procession in the end, but to finish first at Monaco, you must finish, and Carlos Sainz did that, and he won today's race ahead of Verstappen, and a great podium once again for Lando Norris. That win has got to come sooner or later, because Lando has been hugely unlucky not to get it. But again, Ferrari and Red Bull are the class of the field. Ferrari take another win, but at least we have a different winner in Carlos Sainz. That's your lot for today's Monaco Grand Prix. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you when Formula 1 returns